I wanted to have a go at making a scale model of a small dinghy, but there are a lack of actual plans on the internet, and I had to download this particular one, which was closest to what I was thinking I wanted to build in miniature, and I had to scale things off because these are American plans and they work in feet and inches, and we work in millimeters and centimeters and meters here in Australia. So I actually scaled these plans off, and I'll show you in a minute how I did it. Now, never having built a boat before, certainly not in miniature, but this is the plan on how I was going to do it. And this is another dinghy, the Jolly Roger, once again in imperial measurements. But I thought, well, I'll have a go in miniature before I'd even think about tackling this in full size. But it gives me an idea, and I think it's a worthwhile exercise to do these things in miniature, just to see if I would be capable of building a full-size one, which is relatively simple, apparently. From those initial plans, I scaled it back as much as I could using a scale of 1 and 250, and I converted these measurements down here from feet and inches to millimeters, and then using the sketches in this particular pamphlet here, I then scaled down the 4 stations on the plan with the profiles. So reading from the back, this is 4, 3, 2 and station 1. Then once I did that, I went and got myself a balsa wood kit from Bunnings. This was the cheapest thing that I could find around. It's a hobby wood model pack from Bunnings at about 22 bucks or something. The next stage was then tracing those profiles out onto the balsa boards that I had purchased, and you can see here that I made a masonite base. Now, the theory about building these things, if you're building a full-size one, you would build it upside down on some trestle horses. So this in effect is my trestle horses. You can see in there with the detail that I've put with little slight offcuts from the balsa wood. I actually glued them along the centre line, and I'm now in the process of gluing the keel on, and I haven't yet got to the very front station, which is the stem, and I will, once this is dried, I have to bring that down into a curve. So down scaled, it's about a 90 centimetre rather, whatever, just under 1 metre in full scale. Okay, well, I've done a little bit extra. I've put the bow upper things in place, whatever they're called. Now, this is the skeleton now. So we'll just put that over like so. Move that out of the way for a tick. Now, that is basically the skeleton of the boat. Needs a little bit of battening, but what happens now is I'm going to put it back onto its frame here, like so, and then I'm going to put battens along here. So I'll get back to you when that's done. Well, the skeleton of the boat is starting to come together now. I've managed to, this morning, cut out these pieces which I neglected to cut out earlier. But I managed to do it with a small Dremel. And now I'm attaching all the battening and bottom, I don't know what you call them, stringers. Now we have another stringer added. It's very fiddly because I have to use elastic bands, and I'm careful not to break any of this. I had to actually trim these off a flat piece of balsa on the bandsaw over here, and as you can see I have a very thin blade, so it was really close work in there to get those slices off. Anyway, they're working, and that's the main thing. I've just put the another rail on here, and I think that might do for the day, because this glue takes a little while to dry and it's very, very fiddly. However, I'm learning an awful lot about boat building right now. As part of the process, I'm now thinking about what I'm going to line the hull with, the outside of the hull. And I was always intrigued by the idea of these, how they do model aeroplane wings, and this was my first attempts at trying two different things, because you can't get nitrocellulose dope anymore. There is a product called Easy Dope, but there is an easier way. This one here is ordinary tissue, just fine tissue paper, with a 50-50 ratio of PVA glue, wood PVA glue and water, and that's glued onto this frame and then stretched over, and then I just very carefully painted. That worked out okay. You can hear this particular tissue paper is a little bit heavier, and it is actually lunch wrap, not waxed lunch wrap, but an ordinary lunch wrap that we get, and that has worked out just perfectly. So I think that's the way I'm going to cover the hull, and then I'll be able to paint it if I want to. Well, now I'm starting to put a little floor in the boat to give it a little bit more strength. Okay, I've got most of the floor in position now, so now I'll have to think about what the next step might be. Well, now I'm getting fancy. I've put a little bulkhead in here, and I'm going to place this in here as the front deck floor, for want of a better word. I don't know. Anyway, hang on a tick and I'll put it in. Now, I do admit that I don't really know what I'm doing. This is a little exercise in boat building, and it's the first time I've done it. But where that little X is there, this design, as I said earlier, was originally for a little sailboat, and I thought, well, if I'm going this far, why not make it into a little model sailboat? So the idea is where that little X is there, that pencil mark, there will be a mast go in through there at some stage. Well, I've got that little deck set in now, and I've also put a couple of little seats in. Look at that. Oh, how cute. And I'm actually having second thoughts as to whether to cover this with the paper or with a very thin piece of balsa, which is what they would normally do. I did find that there are some very thin sheets in that set that I bought from Bunnings, so I'll ponder that for a little while, because right now I'm going to go and put this on the movie. Well, I've had 2 weeks away in Malaysia to think about what I'm going to do with this hull, and I decided when I got back that I would actually use the balsa wood and make it completely timber, and here is the result. Unfortunately, when I was gluing this particular piece on, I broke the stringer here, but I have this other piece which I will repair. Once this side here is the glue has dried, that gives me the bottom of the hull, and then I can trim it all up. Hey, we're getting there. I'm slowly making progress on this little thing here. I have cut a shape for the side. The hull I have roughly shaped, and I'm going to walk away today and have a think about this overnight before I glue that particular panel on. but I think we're getting something. Okay, well I have one side on and sanded as smooth as I need to get it right now. Now I'm in the process of cutting out the other side, which, because I don't really have a great template for this, I'm actually just doing it by eye. So I've got little pencil marks along the top rails. You'll see that's where I'll cut it off, this area here at the angle, and hopefully we'll be able to shape it back into the other side here with a little bit of glue and probably a little bit of steam or water or whatever. This is the rough profile. You'll see the pencil line there. I'll just keep on the outside of that because it's if I cut down too deep, I've ruined the whole. So I'll just cut this piece out on the bandsaw, and then we'll do a pre-fit. So I've glued the top, or rather this side, the top half of the side on there, and I've left it proud here because I will need to come back later and try and steam that over. So we need to put a bend in that wood. But this is to hold this whole thing in place, and you can see underneath I have left plenty of space, plenty of timber for manoeuvring, if you like, when I go to glue the bottom half on, and hopefully the grain is running the right way, that I'll get that bend in like I've got in this top side. I've put the other part of the hull, the side part, I don't know which for, and now I'm going to trim it up. As you can see, I've left it fairly proud here. I'll get this onto the sander and I'll trim it up. Well, I've sanded down the hull. I'm not all that enamoured with it, but it's the point is I'm making this as a miniature, and it's just a little experiment. There are a number of problems with it. As you can see here on the bow, I made a bit of a miscalculation there, but a little bit of filler will fill that up, and I'm sure I can get it back. I did say earlier on in this video that there were some of these things that were a little bit off square, and that's been a bit of a problem. But overall, I mean, we've got ourselves a little model dinghy, not quite finished, and a little bit to go yet. But hey, for somebody that really doesn't know what they're doing, I think that's not too bad. The one of the problems, I don't know whether we can see it here, but this is a better curve than this one, and a lot of that I think has to do with the station pieces in the first place that I cut out, but I didn't actually place or square up at the particular time. But hey, for a first attempt, I'm not too disappointed. Well, I think I've decided to finish this little item now. This is basically it, but I see a lot of flaws in it. If you notice across here, I said in the earlier, the stem had kicked over to one side. I said, oh, I'll fix that later, but obviously I didn't. And it's, when you look at the actual shape, you can see that there is more of a bow on this side than there is on that side. It's more pronounced from the bottom. When we look, if you look at it, you can see that the lines are more pronounced on one side than the other. But look, as I say, this was an intellectual exercise in how do you build a boat. Well, now I sort of have an idea. This is one way of constructing it. I might do another little model and base it on the stitch and glue thing. Maybe I should just try a full-size one. I don't know. But anyway, I'm quite happy with the final result. I won't turn it into anything else because it's just going to frustrate me because I know the flaws that are there. Anyway, there we go. One model boat from scratch. I could probably cover it with tissue and dope, but is it worth it? Probably not. There we go. Hope you enjoyed that.